Welcome to Building Families, Bridging Differences, a family law journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Building Families, Bridging Differences, a family law journey with Shelly Cooley. Shelly is a certified family law specialist and founder of the Cooley Law Firm in Las Vegas. She focuses exclusively on family law, helping clients with divorce, custody, adoption, and assisted reproduction. And she's known for her compassionate, straightforward approach. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Shelly and I are discussing domestic partnerships in Nevada. Shelly is going to explain how they're formed, what rights they create, and what the process looks like when a couple does decide to separate. Shelly, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Sean.
Let's, just, start with the basics. For someone unfamiliar with how domestic partnerships work in Nevada, how do you explain what legal rights and responsibilities they create?
So, domestic partnerships follow many of the same principles as marriage and divorce.
Sure.
Domestic partnerships were our answer, or Nevada's answer, to the prohibition against same-sex marriages. Although domestic partnerships are not limited to same-sex individuals, any genders can marry each other. But that was our initial answer, and then we legalized same-sex marriage in Nevada, but we still have domestic partnerships. So in many ways, domestic partnerships and marriage is very similar.
So there's a lot of overlap, but also
Yes,
I'm guessing are there
correct.
key differences as well? Like, are there distinctions that still matter?
Correct. Yes, there are.
So I know that, there's obviously similarities, you just said, in between domestic partnerships and marriage from a legal standpoint, but are there key differences that people need to know about?
Yes, absolutely. And is some of the key differences. So let's talk about the similarities first,
Okay,
because that's an easy way to compare and contrast.
great.
So, domestic partnerships are governed by the Nevada Domestic Partnership Act, which is NRS Chapter 122A. And it gives two adults, regardless of gender, many of the same rights and duties as marriage, including community property, inheritance, and support obligations. To dissolve a domestic partnership, at least one partner must live in Nevada, or the partnership must have been registered here.
Okay.
And that is a really important component of domestic partnerships, because there were folks who registered as domestic partners and live in, and then move to states that don't recognize domestic partnerships or don't recognize same-sex marriages. Although we have the Obergefell decision, so currently it's permitted, but before Obergefell, folks would be in a domestic partnership and they would need to be able to dissolve it, and they had no mechanism for doing so. So partnership being registered here is a very important measure, so that is in fact an option. Like divorce, same grounds for dissolution.
Okay.
Incompatibility, meaning the relationship cannot continue. And like divorce, there's no requirement to prove fault. Either
Okay.
partner may file to dissolve the partnership. Now, one of the key differences with a domestic partnership is we have a simplified dissolution process for dissolving domestic partnerships, provided it meets certain criteria. And qualifying couples actually file to dissolve their partnership through the Nevada Secretary of State's office. You file a form, essentially.
And so assuming both parties are in agreement, it's like that simple, so to speak?
Yes, yes. And you may qualify to use the simplified process if the partnership is less than 5 years old, there are no minor children, and neither partner is pregnant, The partners own no real property together.
Hmm.
The total value of the community assets is under $10,000. There are no community debts over $4,000. Both partners waive any claim to support, and both partners agree to the dissolution and sign the joint form. Once that form is accepted, the dissolution is effective immediately.
Got it. You mentioned, triggering basically of, assets over a certain dollar amount. Community property rules are, obviously apply here in Nevada. I'm curious how, you know, between assets and debts, like how do those get divided when the relationship ends?
Well, if we are going through a standard process, it mirrors the divorce process, and
Okay.
it actually refers to the dissolution of marriage rules as to dissolution of the domestic partnership. So you can do a joint petition, which is where parties agree on the disposition of assets and debts, on support provisions. And if there are children, they agree on child custody and child support terms. If it's contested, then we do the same exact process that we would do for a contested divorce action. So you would file a complaint for dissolution of domestic partnership, and the case proceeds through the court process just like it would if it was a divorce.
How courts look at premarital or pre-registration property and financial contributions.
Okay. So with pre-marital and pre-domestic partnership registrations, the date of acquiring community property and assets together is the date of registration or the date of marriage.
Mm.
Depending on what the pre-marital or pre-registration assets are, you can assert a claim to those assets, but it's not a simple process, and courts are very much unlikely to grant that relief because they're of the opinion that the date that the parties intended for formality on the date of marriage or the date of domestic partnership, and that's when the protections begin.
Hmm. Okay. You mentioned earlier spousal support, and I think a lot of people associate that with marriage, but I'm curious what happens when a domestic partnership ends and one partner may need financial support. Is it a similar dynamic as
Absolutely. It is the same dynamic. It is we would refer to the factors in 125.150 in asserting a basis for spousal support, just like we would in a dissolution of marriage action.
okay? And what about privacy? I know, privacy is an issue. Speak to attorneys all the time, and there's reasons to keep things sort of private, and then there's certain things that can't be kept private because if it goes to court, it becomes part of public record. I'm curious in this scenario, in your experience, for partners who, prefer to resolve things privately, what options exist for, creating a clear agreement about, whether it's the property, the debts, parenting decisions, parenting plans, spousal support? How do people do that and keep things private?
So, if we have a mechanism that we can request that the courts seal the record,
Mm.
there are certain papers and pleadings that must remain open to the public that can't be sealed, but we have workarounds for that. We can prepare a marital settlement agreement, or a settlement agreement if it's a domestic
Partnership.
partnership dissolution, where we outline all of the incidents of the domestic partnership: child custody, child support, um, assets and debts, and alimony, a name change if a party changed their name in the process. All of those issues are outlined in the marital settlement agreement. And then we submit that to the court, and they file that document in their confidential file. And then we have a basic decree of divorce that refers back to the marital settlement agreement, so that if there is litigation in the future, then the court is aware and has the document, the dissolution document, so
To
that
refer
issues
to.
can be addressed.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Um, I'm thinking now about just people listening. Someone's listening right now, watching the podcast, and they're preparing perhaps to end a domestic partnership. What information or documentation would you tell them to start to get their hands on to help them approach the process?
In
With more clarity, less stress, all that thing. What's your advice to people in that scenario?
in my field, we call that exit planning. And if you are planning to exit a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
then I definitely think it's important to do. Gather all of the documents that you can. Electronic versions is fine. If you have joint bank accounts, bank records, income tax records, all of that information, copies of passports, birth certificates, everything that you can get copies of, titles to vehicles. It's better to have too much than not enough,
Right.
because that really is going to assist in the dissolution process. It will make it simpler. It will make it more cost effective, and it will make the process much smoother than trying to gather that information that may be in the possession of the other party, and they may not be so inclined to share, and depending on them to produce that from their side.
I see. Yeah. So exit planning, and I am in my mind. I'm immediately thinking of a big spreadsheet. Just
Oh, oh, no, 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 those are awesome. Spreadsheet with the documents to back it up. Yes, I will tell you that most people are not that organized, but yes, spreadsheet with the documentation is amazing.
yeah. Well, even I'm just thinking like, okay, if I were in a domestic partnership, and as naturally happens in any relationship, certain parties take like, oh, she handles the rent or the mortgage, whatever it might be, right? But just to have us to begin that list, that column A of what are all the things like you just made, the assets, the debts, the credit cards. I know we have a mortgage. I know we have a car payment. I know we have child care we pay every month, right? Like all of those things. I may not know, or I may not be able to gracefully obtain the specifics of, right? Depending on my situation, but at least then if I'm then meeting with my attorney, because at some point, if my partner would need to be compelled to share the information, obviously.
Correct. And when I am meeting with folks that are thinking about terminating their marriage or domestic partnership, I have my handy dandy form that asks all kinds of questions about assets and debts that parties have,
Hmm.
with, including, digital currency and,
Oh yeah.
all the kinds of things that you may have and have forgotten about.
Yeah. You just don't
Just
think about it on a day to day.
exactly. So it's pages and it's fill in the blank. So I
Hmm.
have people fill it out, and provide as much detail as they have. So if they don't have copies of it, then we actually know what to ask for and to be on the lookout for, to make sure that when we are dissolving the domestic partnership, we have a complete picture, because
Yeah. Yeah.
just and equitable is the way that we divide things up in dissolution cases.
Got it. Well, that's super helpful, uh, Shelly. Really good. Really good. And as always happens, we're out of time for now. But thanks for sharing your your expertise and point of view. I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean.
You bet. Thanks for listening to Building Families, Bridging Differences, a Family Law Journey. To learn more or schedule a consultation with Shelly Booth Cooley, visit her website, CooleyLawLV.com. That's CooleyLawLV.com. And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to leave a review. Maybe share a link with a friend or family member who you think would benefit from it, or subscribe to the podcast. We want all Nevadans to find the support they need. I'm Sean O'Connor. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.